To undertake the cassava experiment, three aspects were visible to us. First, the way farmers around the research field managed their own fields, not taking care of the weeding process, leading to most of the fields of cassava lost in the weeds and abandoned by farmers. Anyway, in this area where acacia had been harvested. Second, there was this 15 hectares yellow cassava enriched in vitamin A, which had not been harvested because the processing had failed, and yet we had very nice yellow cassava. Yield was very good, but all the produce was lost in the soil. And third, we saw that because of the charcoal production, each hectare had 3 or 4 spots of this kind that we needed then to take care of, refilling them and use them for explorative research. Then of course we noticed specific weeds on the field, and this announced a number of weeds competition that would appear on the field during cultivation. So the first step was to train the people who would be helping us till the soil. And we decided to first of all train people mainly on ridge tillage, which is not practiced in this region. Of course, we also decided to train people on mound tillage, which is not common neither in this region. And the result was satisfactory. And this is one example of a ridge tilled plot. This is what we call flat tillage because it has no specific work. This is a plot that has mound tillage but was not burned, and the field looks like this before being planted when it's not burned. This is a burned plot where we had mound tillage technique, and of course then the first step was to make sure the fields were clean, because weed competition, particularly in unburned plot, were very strong, because all the bank seed was huge in the system. After 8 years, all those weeds, the seeds were activated. So we decided to intervene for the first weeding as soon as the weeds were present, and we noticed that some of the plots were clean. Actually, plots where ridge tillage was practiced had the least weed infestation, and mound tillage brought on second level the less competition compared to flat tillage. And as I explained in the dissertation, we had to take care that the mounds were refilled during the process of weeding. And also we had to control all the cuttings that had not emerged to see what was the problem, and replace them in the first month after planting. Now, what followed was to monitor and see any problem during the growth of cassava, and mainly intervene for the second weeding intervention, which is very important. So the first one intervened after 1 month or 2 maximum, depending on the weed vegetation. The second weeding intervenes depending on the rains and how they activate the germination of the seeds. So at 11 months of age, we decided to prepare the sampling for the yield parameters by measuring the vegetative parameters, base collar diameter, the first ramification for selected cassava plant, total height for selected plants, for the samples basically, and of course the most important was to measure the fresh yield, the tuber, and this required a number of precaution, having a scale up to 100 kilograms, because some of the sub-units could weigh up to 40 kilograms of fresh cassava. And preparing the fields actually was not easy, because this cassava variety can go very high, and ramification is very strong. So each sampling unit was weighed separately. Each sampled plant was also measured, counting the number of tubers per plant, and making sure that all then were put together to go to the processing unit. Actually, in EB, there has been a very active production of cassava, but the plant has been abandoned, so we needed to make use of it, because some of the equipment was there. So on the processing area, we had to again measure the fresh tuber and put them according to the treatment, so as not to mix them. And the following day after harvesting, peeling was done, basically by women. It has been traditionally for women to do the peeling. It helps them to also get cash from that activity. And after peeling, the peeled cassava was washed. After washing, it was grated. This grating machine has been in EB, but not unused for a number of years, because production has been basically low since Novacell, the original producer, stopped producing cassava. And after grating, cassava was put in clean bags. The bags were marked according to the treatment, sealed, and put in a tank with clean water for 24 hours. And that was to make sure that any toxic compounds in cassava was removed. Actually, yellow cassava has a very low level of toxic compound. The following day, we had to press the content so as to remove the water before putting the content to dry on the sun. And after that, anyway, we had to do the follow-up of the drying, monitoring that no rain will surprise us and damage the whole process. And when actually after 3 days, Cassava was dry because these are called microchips. They are so small in size that after 3 sunny days they are dried, then measured for dry matter, not really dry matter, but dry yield, and then ready to be packaged and sent for sale. It was not really sale for commercial purpose, but sent to Kinshasa for consumption. Now, another step was to evaluate the peeling quality and see how different, and actually weigh the peels and see if there was difference depending on the treatment. And the difference depended on whether more flesh was taken from the tuber or not. And we noticed that the smaller the tuber, the more flesh tended to be removed. And the smaller the tubers, the more workers tend to discard them because they were difficult to handle. So that was important at the end to see how the peeling process can lead to some level of loss when you have tons and tons of fresh cassava. A lot can go in the peeling process. So that is basically what is expressed in the cassava experiment. That in brief. And now I would like to simply present the result from the statistical analysis and attempt to discuss them and submit them to your appreciation and receive your feedback, your comments, and any corrections that will help remove certain details that may be unnecessary, add missing elements, do editing, and complete the work. Thank you very much.